Non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. If these technologies are not made by any government, who's making them?
Was anything described as that we have possession of bodies?
Do you believe, just for the record, that the federal government, any part of the federal government, is knowingly concealing evidence about UAPs from the public?
On November 13th, 2024, there was a UAP hearing in the U.S. Congress. This hearing, held by the House Oversight and Accountability Subcommittee on National Security. The hearing was a continuation of the growing interest and transparency efforts in the U.S. government regarding UAP, especially after a series of high-profile reports and military testimonies. The four witnesses and testimonies are Luis Elizondo, a former Department of Defense official, Dr. Gallaudet, a U.S. Navy Chief Executive Officer, Michael Schellenberger, a founder of Public, and lastly, Michael Gold, who is a former NASA Associate Administrator of Space Policy and a member of NASA UAP Independent Study Team. Many things was mentioned in their testimonies, and some are quite chilling. Let's get straight to the point. I won't bore you with the testimonies as it's just them speaking. However, after their testimonies, they was asked some questions. Watch this.
If these technologies are not made by any government, who's making them? Private companies, or are you implying they are crafted by a non-human intelligence?
Well, ma'am, that's precisely why we're here. The problem is that, temporally speaking, over decades, not just the last 10 years, to put this in perspective,
Are these private companies you're implying, or is this non-human intelligence?
It may be both.
Okay.
When it comes to Blue Force Technologies, I would not be able to discuss
Okay.
that.
Are you read into secret UAP crash retrieval programs?
We would have to have a conversation in a closed session, ma'am. I signed documentation 3 years ago that restricts my ability to discuss specifically crash retrievals. I submitted for my book through the DOPSR process, which took a year for it to be reviewed. And what is in the book is what I was told I'm allowed to talk about.
Has the government conducted secret UAP crash retrieval programs, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, were they designed to identify and reverse engineer alien craft, yes or no?
Yes.
Does the U.S. government have any reverse, okay, we already answered that question about retrieval programs. Do any U.S. contractors have the same?
I would prefer to address that in a closed session, ma'am.
Okay. In your book, you mentioned government employees who've been injured by UAPs, placed on leave, and receiving government compensation for their injuries. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How can the government deny we have recovered craft if they're paying people because they've been injured by recovered craft?
Ma'am, that's a great question. That's why I think we're here again, because I've seen the documentation by the U.S. government for several of these individuals who have sustained injuries as a result of a UAP incident.
Mr. Elizondo, did I have that correct?
Sir.
I'm a recovering lawyer, so I'm going to put my hat on for a second. You said you signed a document. Love that. Who gave that to you?
The U.S. government, sir.
Okay, you have a copy of it?
It is stored in a SCIF right now. I do not have possession of it. The U.S. government does.
What department of the U.S. government gave you this document?
I will say the Department of Defense. Unfortunately, I can't say in this forum much more than that.
You specifically said the document said you can't talk about crash retrieval. Well, you know, you can't talk about Fight Club if there's no Fight Club.
Correct.
Okay, I'm just making an observation.
Yes, sir.
So that document that you signed, that you said exists, specifically said you can't talk about crash retrieval.
Correct, sir. It was a limitation on because already I'd been speaking publicly about the topic, and so the document said you can continue saying X, Y, Z, but you cannot discuss the topic of crash retrievals.
Give me the atmosphere of signing this document. You're in a room by yourself?
I'm in a SCIF with a security officer, sir.
Just one-on-one? Anybody else?
There may have been an assistant as well. It was in a SCIF within a Department of Defense facility.
Elizondo just admitted that there are real crash retrieval programs, but not only that, but they are designed for reverse engineering alien spacecraft. That is just wild. People who are retrieving the crafts are getting injured as a result, but I wonder how. Is it because there is alien biometrics on the crafts that they are retrieving and they are just falling sick as a result? Or is it something simple of just catching the flu for being out in the cold for too long? But if there is crash retrievals, you're probably wondering, well, where are the bodies? Well, watch this.
In the discussions, it's simply about material
Or is there discussion about it was previously testified that there was biologics that were collected. Are you aware of any of that?
I am, sir, aware of the reporting that biologics have been recovered. Again, my focus was more nuts and bolts, looking at the physical aspects of these phenomena, how they interacted around military equities and nuclear equities. So I'm certainly not a medical expert. I would not be able to probably provide you a whole lot of value in that simply because I don't have the expertise.
But was anything described as that we have possession of bodies?
Yes, yes.
We have is it multiple types of creatures or?
Sir, I couldn't answer that. I can tell you anecdotally that it was discussed quite a bit when I was at the Pentagon. The problem is the supposed collection of these biological samples occurred before my time, in fact, before I was even born.
And was this part of the Lockheed Martin discussion, or was this the biologics is a completely separate?
Separate yet related.
Okay. Has anyone made contact?
Sir, I'm sorry, could you specify?
Has there been any, to your knowledge, any communication with a non-human life form?
So the term communication is a bit of a trick word because there's verbal communication like we're having now. The problem is you also have nonverbal communication. And so I would say definitively yes, but from a nonverbal meaning, when a Russian reconnaissance aircraft comes into U.S. airspace, we scramble 2 F-22s, and we are certainly communicating intent and capability. I think the same goes with this. We have these things that are being observed over controlled U.S. airspace, and they're not really doing a good job hiding themselves. They're making it pretty obvious they have the ability to even interfere with our nuclear equities and our nuclear readiness.
So, as you just heard, there is in fact bodies. I wonder if it could be referring to my last video of the alien interview footage that was released. If you haven't watched it, then watch it after this video. And do you think there has been face-to-face conversations with extraterrestrial life? Comment down below, because I'm intrigued what you think so far. Have you heard what a USO is? Well, if you haven't, it's an unidentified submerged object. Do you think it's possible for a UAP, also known as a UFO, to drop straight into the ocean and turn into a USO? Well, let's find out.
Have you specifically had any experience with submersible objects?
Sir, I've no personal experience, but I've had witnesses on submarines come to me and say they've seen on sonar data.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah,
how would
USOs.
how would you characterize those, and how do they move?
The one instance that was revealed to me was in the 80s on a nuclear-powered submarine, a ballistic missile submarine, that the object exhibited the characteristics of a Russian torpedo in terms of its speed of movement and closing rate with the submarine, and then it slowed and followed the submarine slowly in its wake for a period of minutes, and then rapidly exited the scene. And nothing that we know of, and technology-wise, could replicate that.
And the speed of these objects was faster than anything that we have or anybody else has that would be manned. Is that correct?
It was on the order
Underwater.
of a torpedo. So
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. But as it exited, it did.
Well, I don't exactly know how fast a torpedo is, but I expect it does better than my old outboard Scott Atwater, so I'll take that as a yes.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Do you believe that there is a concerted effort by the Pentagon to keep Congress out of the loop regarding these UAP activities, specifically in our waters?
Yes.
I think it's about 5% of our ocean that's actually been studied in detail by man, and we've studied more of space than we had of our own oceans. And so are there any accounts of UAPs emerging from or submerging into our water, which could indicate a base or presence beneath the ocean's surface?
I don't know about a base, but as I mentioned, I had a different source entirely describe this pretty extraordinary footage that exists of orbs, of an orb coming out of the ocean and being met by another orb.
Last question, Doctor, real quick, can you tell us about the Omaha incident in greater detail? I've read your background, right? Some people would label you as a member of the deep state, since you worked in government for a long period of time. But can you tell us more about that incident? You've written a lot about that.
I wrote a lot about incidents like it, Congressman, but that specific incident involved the USS Omaha, the littoral combat ship of the U.S. Navy operating off Southern California. I don't remember the exact date. It was within the last decade. And what the watchstanders on the bridge observed was a UAP Again, something that was aloft but had no observable exhaust or control surfaces, so it was something that couldn't be explained, and then they saw it enter the water from the atmosphere and going through the air-sea interface, and so thus exhibiting transmedium travel.
This next question is for Mr. Gallaudet. To your knowledge, have any USOs ever outpaced our submarines?
Yes, ma'am.
At what magnitude?
I don't have the exact speed, but again, a witness came to me, a credible former submarine officer who observed it on sonar data. And this was in the 80s in the North Atlantic during a storm, and it outpaced his submarine by orders of magnitude.
Can you believe that we have in fact explored more than space than we have our own oceans? Only 5%. Really? I wonder if now they are going to explore more, maybe uncover an extraterrestrial habitat. Not gonna lie, that would be earth-changing news for us, don't you think? But seriously, USO can outrun our own Navy. That is crazy. Surely this has to be extraterrestrial. What can go faster than that? Moving on. Drones have been spotted above military installations. Have you seen the incident when Langley Air Force Base had drones hovering over it? Well, if you haven't, basically drones the size of cars was hovering over Langley Air Base. The Congress spoke about it. Watch this.
Mr. Schellenberger, you're particularly familiar with the Langley Air Force Base incident a year ago? Are you familiar?
Just from what I read in the
Just
news.
from what you've read?
Yeah.
I would imagine a large percentage of the American population became aware of that with the Wall Street Journal article. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And were you aware of that incident prior to the Wall Street Journal article?
No.
To the rest of the panel, was the Wall Street Journal article the first time that y'all were made aware of what was essentially an over 2-week UAP frenzy over Langley Air Force Base? Were y'all aware of this prior to the Wall Street Journal article? Anybody? Show of hands. Yes,
sir.
Dr. Gallaudet, could you give me how did you become aware of it?
A colleague of mine who I referenced previously, Chris Mellon, he wrote an extensive article about this, that there were other incursions of drones over Langley before this, as well as many, many military installations over the last 5 decades.
And it's my understanding that there's been an ever-increasing in number, and I'm trying to think how to say this because I wear 2 different hats. I'm still in the Air Force. So, I mean, it seems that they're becoming increasingly brash, and the question that we really have to figure out is it China or is it non-human? And I think that's the biggest question the American people want to know. If it's China, it's scary because they have a lot of technology that we cannot explain. And if it's non-human, that's scary because we don't know the intent. Would you say that's fair?
Yes, Congressman. And in fact, I really believe that we should use this hearing as a catalyst to improve and bolster our air defense capabilities and our maritime domain awareness capabilities, because obviously there are holes in it, whether it be UAP of non-HI direction or NHI direction, or, like as you say, sir, China or any other adversary.
Are you all aware of any task force at the Pentagon or in the national security apparatus that's trying to assess the answer to that question?
At the current moment, sir, no, but this is a great point. From 2020 to 2022, there was a UAP task force in the DoD succeeding where Mr. Elizondo worked, led by Jay Stratton, who had the first comprehensive whole-of-government approach to UAP, which involved pathways to declassification and to increase transparency, as well as assessing the national security risks of UAP. This was a really well-established approach, and we have all advocated that something like it return.
I'm running out of time. The last thing is that we need authorities. The law enforcement, military do not have authorities to actually engage, and Congress needs to act to give those authorities to local law enforcement and the military so they have clear guidelines on how to assess these issues going forward. I yield back. Thank you.
China? Really? Surely if China was capable of making drones the size of cars, then why is Elon Musk the only one to make boosters that sends rockets to space safely come back to Earth to reuse? Surely if China was behind this kind of tech, then surely they would have been the first to create that? I don't know. What do you think? When they said law enforcements don't have the authority to engage, Well, that caught my eye. You remember the Miami Mall incident that happened in January 2024, right? At Bayside Marketplace. Lots of police attended to, well, what they said was a mass shooting, or was it a possible riot? I can't remember, 'cause of the BS they came up with, as there is no footage of any criminal activities that happened. But people recorded aliens. Maybe the police needs authority because of this incident? Is it linked? But going back to the unidentified aerial phenomena, why haven't we got high-resolution videos or pictures? Do they exist? Or are they hidden?
What's the key takeaway, just a few seconds, about the Immaculate Constellation document you provided us today?
I think that what the American people need to know is that the U.S. military and intelligence community are sitting on a huge amount of visual and other information, still photos, video photos, other sensor information, and they have for a very long time. And it's not those fuzzy photos and videos that we've been given. There's very clear
High
images,
res.
high resolution.
How many visuals, graphics, videos, photos?
I mean, I've been told hundreds, maybe thousands. I mean, I also wanted to say, because there was some conversation around concern around the revealing of these materials, revealing the source collections, but some of these are shot from helicopters using normal videos of oceans. I just think that's absurd that somehow you're going to be revealing some secret U.S. technology by revealing that you've photographed orbs off the coast of Kuwait.
So, do you think UAPs are real? Do you want to know what they think? Don't forget, before they even stood on the panel, they had to take an oath before testifying.
I want to just start by just asking everyone on the panel or witnesses, and I had a chance to read all the testimony before, but just to set the agenda, just if we can go down real briefly, do you believe, just for the record, that the federal government, any part of the federal government, is knowingly concealing evidence about UAPs from the public?
Yes, sir.
100%.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. I also want to just go down the line. I know many of you have already said this, but I just, for the record again, just briefly, what do you believe UAPs could be or are?
Strong evidence that they are non-human, higher intelligence.
I echo my colleague's comment, sir.
Genuinely do not know.
Don't know, but we must find out.
What did you think? If you like this, then please subscribe and join the Sky Mystique family. And if you haven't watched the last videos, then check them out. If you want more videos like this, let me know.